Don't forget to like and subscribe. Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourself for an electrifying experience. Tonight, we're honored to host a guest whose name sends shivers down the spines of horror fans everywhere. He's a master of thrills, chills, and cinematic magic. This multi-talented virtuoso is a movie producer, actor, international filmmaker, stunt performer who brings both terror and wonder to the silver screen. But that's not all. He also captivates audiences with his own podcast, The Peter Anthony Show. Our guest's filmography reads like the who's who of spine-tingling horror and the edge of your seat. Thrillers featuring titles such as The Take, Hollywood, Red Carpet Radio, Dead Talk, Slasher Scotty, Project Chameleon, The Horrorverse, Steve Dash, Friday the 13th Vengeance, Lakedown, Red Swan, Box, Roseblood, The Fall of Camp Blood, The Swire Massacre, Evil 3, Killcraft, The Death of Snow White, and Love Life. Now, his relentless pursuit of excellence has earned him accolades that prove his prowess in the world of horror and beyond. In 2021, he snagged the Best Feature Award at the Dark Fest and the Best Screenwriting Award. He followed this up in 2022 by winning Best Feature at the Hollywood Blood Horror Festival. With his production company, he continues to push the boundaries of filmmaking, creating stories that haunt our dreams and leave us wanting more and searching for the light switch. So get ready to be wowed, and maybe even a little spooked. Please join me in welcoming the incredibly talented, the dynamic Peter Anthony. Peter, thank you so much for your time and welcome to our show.
Oh man, bravo on that intro. Can I hire you as my PR guy? Oh,
Absolutely.
that was phenomenal. Man, A plus, the best I've ever seen. Congratulations. That was great. Thank you.
I want to dive in this to you. You know what? Before we even dive into this, Peter, behind you, okay, we have these beautiful shadow boxes. We have tons and tons of beautiful Friday the 13th paraphernalia. Walk me through this.
Yeah, so the masks, forgive it. I have a gentleman making these stands for me, so it's not where it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to do a whole video on it. But just started collecting Friday 13th masks. And as I started to collect masks, I started collecting other things. So like I call them the shadow boxes. This is like part 6. So it'll have, I'm sorry, part 7. So it'll have the cane machete, the 11 by 17 poster, sometimes as a figure, a VHS, and signed pictures. Everything on there is signed by the Jason. There's no actors involved. It's just the Jason. And then there's a plaque on it too, signed. So I have that for every single movie ever. They can't see them all here. I started collecting them like that, going to cons. And then as far as masks, I think I was telling you earlier, I basically have every mask that I know of, I think I know of. From every book cover, every magazine cover, every movie, every damage, signed by every Jason ever that I could ever get. So I think I have 79 of them now. So I'm going to eventually do a video on that too. I think I'm done. I think there might be one more mask in a different country that was really hard to make that someone's trying to make for me. But yeah, that's about it. Just a big fan of Jason.
So why Jason? Why not anybody else in that cast? I mean, you had said it very specifically. You're like, just the Jason, no
Yeah.
one else.
You
Why
know what it
just
is?
Jason?
Like when you're little, like when I was 6 years old and I would sneak downstairs to watch HBO when I was like 6 years old. I don't think any of us knew what it was. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, oh, I like this. And then as I got older, I became like a jock and, thought I was like an alpha male and bodybuild and fought and stuff like that. So I think inside of me back then that I liked that conflict, that like danger, that kind of bravado, because he has a swag to him. So I think that's really what it was. And then as I got older, he was just badass, and he's just such a complicated figure that you don't know. He's almost like Godzilla, where he's doing really bad things, but you're sort of rooting for him, the anti-hero. So I think that's why I connected with him.
Do you have a favorite Jason mask? Out of the 79 that you have, is there one that you're like, you know what? This one just holds a special spot.
Well, so many. So favorite looking masks is part 4, 3, and 7. I have a chrome mask that's worth $800. It's actually the chrome from part 9. It's not made of like silver. It's actually made of chrome. I have so many different ones, but I'll give you a little story on this one if I may. So Steve Dash, notoriously from Friday 13 Part 2, he was in our movies Vengeance 1 and 2. I made this sack and I made this little head for him. And he notoriously hated the guy who had got the credit for playing Jason, Warrington Gillette. And they had major issues. Like he'd see him at a con, he'd tear up his pictures. It was like a big ordeal. And this is before I signed Steve to work with us, but I was a fan of his. And I used to see people go to his table with Warrington Gillette signed pictures.
Yeah.
He'd go, yeah, I'd sign it. And he would take it and rip it up right in front of the fan. So I was like, oh my God. So I went up to him and I was like, Steve, I go, Warrington Gillette signed this thing. I go, I'm not going to lie to you and say he didn't or whatever. I go, however, I'm such a big fan. If I can get you to sign this, that's fine. Just please don't ruin it. Like I made it and it's a big deal. And he grabbed it and I think he wasn't going to listen to me. And what am I going to do? Beat up an older guy? So, and then he turned and he signed it. So, and now his family, when we did Friday 13th Vengeance, didn't believe me that he signed it. In fact, we got into an argument about it and they stopped talking to me until I went in and found the video that I had of him signing it. And they're like, you have no idea how special that is because he simply doesn't do that for anybody. So just because of that story alone, this one means a lot to me for sure. Yeah. I don't know why me. I don't know why, but
All right, so now I want to dive into this with you. Your
yeah.
filmography. Why the horror genre?
Again, I think it's that roller coaster ride of emotions you get. I think as adults, we deal, me and you, with everyday stuff, right? Loss, family issues, relationships. That's kind of like the norm. So for me to go to horror, it's like you're jumping out of your skin and going somewhere that you weren't before. I mean, how often would you see what it looked like for a machete to take someone's head off, or rip someone's heart out or something like that? These are things that you don't see on a day-to-day basis that grab your eye. It's almost like watching a car crash. As bad as it is, you almost are drawn to it. So I think that's why. It's just anything that gets my heart going. I'm kind of mellow, nothing really phases me. I've had tons of surgeries and injuries, and I used to fight and play football, and like nothing really like gets me going. But a good horror movie will get the heart pumping, and I think it just makes you feel alive at times.
So there's two neat comments that you talked about. You talked about your football, but you're also into stunts and your acrobatics as well. But I want to ask you, you've worked on you were part of Friday the 13th Vengeance.
Yes.
How does it feel knowing that you've contributed to such a legendary horror franchise?
Oh man, it's the best. All of us, me, Jason Brooks, Sean Lutzis, Cody Newton. It's just an honor. So, especially when you're on set and we were with CJ Graham, Jason from part 6, Steve Dash from part 2. We worked with Tom Matthews, Tom McLaughlin. I've worked with Terry Kaiser, Laura Park Lincoln. So I grew up like absolutely idolizing these people. And to now be part of that and to go to like conventions and even be recognized, whatever level that is, to
Yeah.
be recognized along with those people that you've contributed even 1% towards the fandom. It's honestly a super honor. I mean, fans come up to you and go like, "Hey, your autograph," and you're just like, "Is this really happening? Is this really me?" So I take a lot of pride in it because we really, really try not to mess up the lore or to half-ass anything. We really try to give the best that we can to the franchise.
So I like that you said that because it's this instance of here's the lore, here's the true character from what it was way back when, and we don't want to twist and turn and deviate from really the killer of who he is, and especially in those movies.
Right. 100%. Yeah. So Jason Brooks and I, when he'd play my Jason. We would go over walking, how you move, the movements. I mean, we spent like thousands of dollars on the costumes to make. They're not just spirit store masks. They're custom made each time. Some of them like up to $10,000. The right mask. We go and get the right machete from that movie with the damage. If it was an Italian wooden handle, that's what we get. And we try to really pay homage to everybody that way, for as much budget as we have.
No, of course, and that's amazing that you do that. A lot of people will just, as you said, go to Spirit and say, "Hey, this is going to have to work for
Yeah,
budget or bust."
yeah, but it takes you out of it because you're not scared of them.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like them. So
So when we talk about that scariness, that jump, how do you get into that creative process for truly terrifying scenes?
as far as writing or directing or just being in the scene.
That's a really good. You know what? Let's go with directing.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because there's different things.
Yeah. I'm going to
Uh
come back to the other ones as well, but
yeah,
directing first.
directing is it's weird. It's a little bit easier and a little bit harder. So it's easier because if you're well prepared and you went over your script and you went over the actors and the scenes and your storyboards and everything, then you really have a great idea what you're trying to accomplish. The somewhat challenge is taking this brain here and transferring it to what the actor is, especially if they're not a Friday the 13th fan. So like at times I have a saying where I wish I could take a USB and stick it in my head and then put it into your head. So you got to find a way. Well, one of the ways I found is if they're not on the level that you need them to be at, you don't want to tell an actor you're doing it wrong or it's bad or you suck or this. So I came up with just a number system. It's real simple. I'd be like, let's say your name is John. Hey, John, you're at about a 4 right now. This scene right here is about a 7.5, 8. And usually, if they're a good actor, if you give them that little range, they get it. They need to add a little bit more. I think that works better than direct instructions. Because if you give them direct instructions, now they're trying to do it your way and they're coming out of their character that they created in their mind.
So when you're putting pen to paper, how do you do that? I mean, we're always going to have this, hey, in my mind, this is the perfect scene, the scariest scene, this is the kill shot. How do you write that down without, I'll say, really giving it all away to the actors when they're going for the read and saying, hey, guys, that's the kill shot. We really need that to be the best.
Yeah. As far as kills, they get excited, right? Almost every actor you sign, they're like, "How do I die? How do I die?" And I'm like, "Oh, we'll get to it. We'll get to it." I was the same way. I'm the same way. Like, how do you die? So kills. I mean, the kills probably is a good question because we spend the most time and money on the kills. I mean, we had one kill that was 10 grand alone for Rosebud, which was the weed eater kill where Sanchez gets cut in half, which is homage to part 7 with that big weed eater. So it's the most preparation in there. And I think on set, you don't have to do much because that actor sees how much you're doing for that kill for them, really. A lot of time their whole body is molded. There's several practice runs. And then a lot of them are one goes. So you tell them, listen, this is it. We have one wall. We have one exploding guts. We don't have a budget where we can do it 10 times. And you walk them through it and stuff like that. Honestly, when they see how much you put into it, they're on board and they ask questions and then you answer them. And then at the end, you show them and you're like, check this out. And then they love it. They love it usually.
So what do you find is the most challenging part when you're hitting record? You got these actors, everyone's in place, you have your blood cannon, you got your machines, we're setting up, we're ready to go. What's that one thing where you're like, without fail, this is going to be the most challenging piece?
Special effects. Any special effects guy will tell you, even the greatest in the world, the greatest are just luckier that, I mean, sometimes they'll do one scene for 3 days until they get it right. And we have an hour and a half before Joey has to catch his flight. You know what I'm saying? So there's a big rush. That's what it is. So, like the weed eater kill against Sanchez, I mean, molded her body, flew her from Texas, sent her back, had the guts made, had multiple pumps put in, had the body chained, had the weed eater, and the weed eater, for some weird reason, this thing cuts trees down, was bouncing off the body. And we didn't get the slice in half. He had to bounce it 6 or 7 times. Then it caught the guts, but because it caught the guts, the blood didn't spurt the way we wanted it. So what I was going to have like a 1 cut scene for 30 seconds became like a 4-second cut scene. We made it work, and we reshot the guts falling and the bullet coming out, and it worked, but it almost never goes the way you want it to. And that's why when you watch those movie documentaries, you realize they did it 10 times before they got it the way they wanted to, especially if you're doing something you've never done before. So that's the challenge, but it's also the reward.
Big risk, big payoff.
Yeah, it's fun too. You learn.
Now, I want to ask you, you've won actually a large collection of awards, and I've only highlighted some of them, some being the Hollywood Blood Horror Festival and even the Dark Festivals there. Do you find that with these awards and accolades that you have to step up your game, or it influences how you've chosen to go to camera or pen to paper type of a thing with your projects?
Great question. There's one that I won. Man, it's downstairs. I almost want to grab it. It is the Horror Fest, I believe it was, and I won Best Supporting Actor. And Adrienne King, who played Alice in Friday the 13th Part 1, iconically won the same award as me a few years before with a film that she did. And she posted that picture, and then when I posted that picture of me holding it, it's kind of like you said, like, wow. well, okay, so if I want it like her, then I really need to step it up. You almost have like half of you is excited you've achieved something, and then the other that never good enough half of you is like, oh, you need to now you need to okay, you're in the big boy realm now. You need to step it up. So yeah, that was the award for me when you heard a peer name that you idolized next to yours that made you want to step it up.
That's amazing. You're jumping in the big end of the pool now. You no time for water wings.
No floaties.
Now, I want to ask you a question here. You have a production coming up, or Death of Snow White, and it
Yes.
puts this dark twist on a classic tale. How do you approach this well-known story and then twist it with a horror genre without, I'll say, upsetting the entire world?
Yeah, great. Well, now I'm a producer on there, and I will act on there, and I'll be on set and help. But the whole film is being produced is the executive producer is Sean Lutzis, and the writer and director is Jason Brooks, who played Jason in a bunch of my films and other actors in my films. And Jason has carved an amazing story. He sent us the script, and we read it, and it is phenomenal. And it's like you said, you don't want to do. Not to knock them, but like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. I don't know if you saw that film. It's like they basically just took the name Winnie the Pooh and made a slasher film with it. We don't want to steal a name just for that. It's just that it's now open property, and we want to tell a different story. So it's basically the same story, just a lot darker. Just envision it like a Tim Burton telling it. It's
Hmm.
kind of like the route that we're going while keeping it still accurate to the original story. It's fun. Jason Brooks is phenomenal. I mean, they're building an entire haunted forest. They're building castles, villages. I mean, it is a really big time production.
So you had mentioned that you were a producer on this. How do you know which projects to take on and which projects not to take on? Or, hey, this is kind of a favor to somebody versus something that you're passionate about or really love to get behind?
The script. So the script is huge. It's pretty much known in the business. You don't have anything until you have a script. You could be super passionate about something, but unless someone can get the script and ask you questions, that's where it really all starts. But there is friends of mine that I do support, and people in the industry that I do support into indie films. And this film, like me, Jason, and Sean, Cody, always kind of collaborate together. So I was never going to say no. Plus, this one's by far the biggest budget that we've ever had, and probably going to be the biggest movie we've done to date. So that's, I'm on board for that because the good thing about us, I think, is we always kind of just get a little better every film. That's the goal. Get a little better, a little better, a little better. And I think we're on that trend. And this movie, I think, puts us a little bit up more too.
It's neat that you've said that because it kind of leads me right into my next question for you is what advice would you give to aspiring filmmakers who want to break into the horror genre?
Nike, just do it. Like when I first went to write Roseblood, I was just a small actor on Vengeance. And then I'm like, I'm going to write a film. I'm going to make a film. I'm going to do all this stuff. And everyone's like, you never writ before. You never produced. You never did this. You don't even know how to hold a camera. You don't do anything. It doesn't matter. It's just your passion. And with the passion, I got Lar Park Lincoln, Tina from Part 7, Terry Kaiser, Weekend at Bernie's,
Yeah.
Kevin Spiritus, all these people from the passion and the script. And then it's easy. You just surround yourself with people that are way better than you. This guy's way better at me at this. This guy's good. Why go try to learn something he's done for 25 years? I'm never going to be as good as him. So put him on the team. And then you get those people all in place. And the biggest thing, you got 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. You listen. Now, sometimes the ideas don't make sense. Sometimes they don't work to your story, but there will be several times on set and with the script that somebody will have an idea that if you're humble enough to listen will be better than yours. And then not only does the movie become better, but you empower that person on set and you empower his way of thinking and around other people. That everybody just lifts themselves up. So that's my advice. 2 ears and one mouth, and just do it.
I like that.
Thank
So
you.
when we talk about just doing it, listening twice as much, in your opinion, what would make a horror film truly stand out from the rest?
What would or what has for me?
Ooh, I like that. What has made a horror film really stand out for you?
It's one thing: story.
Hmm.
And so many of them don't have it anymore. And it's just what I always uh, try to pride myself on is story. And my team really attacks me with that too. Like when I write something, I'm like, I think it's great. And they'll be like, well, what about this and this? And I'll be like, well, they're just, they're just actors with one line. Well, what's his story? Where'd he come from? Why is he there? Is he mad? Is he sad? What's his relationship with this other person? Why'd that person come talk to him? Like, oh, it doesn't matter. It's just one sentence. And he's like, well, if it doesn't matter, the fans aren't going to matter. And then I'm like, you're right. So you develop all this character and in this world that no one will know, but it might make him say two words different that then another character could react off, and you engage with them. So for me, it's story. I love when story is part of horror because it makes like Jaws. You know, Jaws is horror. That's one of the best stories ever.
I, I absolutely love what you said here because it really takes, the content of the horror genre, right? That's really known for cliches and tropes, and really
Yes.
makes it twist and stand and say, yeah, okay, we're gonna cut your head off with a machete here in a minute, but before then, this is how we're gonna make you interesting. This is how we're gonna make you stand out.
And you don't care about them. If you don't care about them when they die, then it doesn't really matter. You know, so I mean, I've gotten some heat for developing too long of a story. People are like, oh, you could have made that 15 minutes quicker. Yeah, but at the end, when they died, you went, that's what I was going for. You know what I'm saying? When you have these other people that just get slaughtered by the dozen, you don't really care. Yeah, it's cool to see the kills, but you have to care somewhat, or it's not as scary to you.
So when we talk about that and we end up seeing the final project, what's the scariest scene that you've ever filmed?
That how about, have I been in or been filmed or filmed myself?
You know, I love your back questions that you've been in. What's the scariest scene that you've been in?
Hey man, I'm like a perfectionist, so like one question's never enough. You know, I want to like nail it down. The scariest movie that film that scene that I've ever been in, it's probably Vengeance One. I have this iconic stare down with Jason Brooks at the end as the prisoner after he just slaughtered 12 prisoners, and I'm
Hmm.
the 13th prisoner, and we're face to face. And you know, I'm not small, but Jason Brooks in costume with everything on is 6'7", 6'8", you know, 240 pounds, and I'm just looking up at him, and it ends. And I think the fact that we didn't show the kill scene was a scary thing. You just hear me yell off screen. Sometimes I don't like that, but in that scene I did, because in that scene, the badass prisoner me, who seemed unbeatable, was humbled. And I think it was scary for the fans that way.
You know, it's neat when we talk about this because when we have these horror genres and these horror films, these kill scenes and the scariest moments, some of the times it can have a psychological impact. Do you ever get scared or creeped out while you're on set?
Jason Brooks for Rosebud, I was sitting in a guest room at Sean's house, and we were about to shoot that morning, and I did not ever see him in the costume that we made. Marcio Charlie in Brazil designs these costumes. He handmade it perfect for Jason, and he showed up at the door, and he just swung. He didn't knock, he didn't say anything, and he just swung the door. But I have a picture of it, and he's sitting in the hallway, and I was like, "Holy shit, that's scary!" And the lights behind him, and it's just like shadowing him cut towards me, and I was like, "Man, that is scary," because he's a big dude, and I was half like super happy because you know, like that's what my fans are gonna see. Is this what I'm seeing? And secondly, like, yeah, scary. And Jason is scary on set. Literally, people say this all the time, the nicest guy in the world. No, no, no. Jason Brooks is the nicest, most humble, like teddy bear guy in the world. But when he's in costume, he doesn't talk to you. He doesn't acknowledge you, doesn't nod at you, he doesn't do anything. He's just there to perform. And people on set will just like walk by him and look at him kind of weird. And he just doesn't even pay attention to him. And then even when he's sitting in the actor's chair as Jason, like he doesn't converse with anybody, doesn't talk to anybody. If I have to talk to him, I whisper in his ear kind of thing just for instructions. So Jason Brooks got me scared a couple times being in costume.
I'm just picturing it in my head. You open the door and there he is. You're like, oh shit.
Yeah. He's not talking. He's just staring at me. Yeah, with a machete, you know.
So, with your experience, where do you think the future of horror filmmaking is headed?
I think the future's now. I think it is now. I mean, you look at back at the 80s and how much success it had. People say, oh, that was the slasher, that was the height of it. I think now it's more than ever. You got Friday the 13th, the game, TCM, the game, Killer Clowns, the game. There's more games coming out. You have black directors that you never had in horror that are kicking butt, that have never been in that genre before. You have TV series, Chucky. You have conventions that are through the roof now, charging $80 for autographs. You have more series coming out. You have more toys. Horror, when I grew up, was almost taboo because nobody's parents my age liked horror. But when I grew up in the 80s, it was like you were a little weird, and now it's cool. So I honestly Scream, you know, Scream's found a new audience again with the last one. I think now is the highlight of horror. I think it's in a great place. I think it's so much more diverse than it used to be.
Do you think we're ever going to get past these 80s slasher, knife goes in, head explodes type of thing and get more into thriller, or there's always going to be a place for a thrasher ripping somebody apart in a cornfield?
Always going to be a place because it's like thoughtless fun at times, It's almost like boxing or MMA. You don't even know these guys 99% of the time, but you're going to watch it, or if people love it. Same with race car, same thing. So I think there's always going to be a niche for that, almost like a release, like, oh, I hate my boss, wish I can kill him. Oh, I'll watch this movie, you know?
I'm going to ask you this random question here. If you could look back on your passion that you have with Friday the 13th and with Jason, you'd said, you know what? I got to fall in love with a completely different horror iconic franchise. Which one would it be?
Halloween. Michael Myers is my second favorite. Just love the mystique about him and the not talking, always being in the shadows, the boogeyman. And I kind of like the original versions of him better, where he wasn't super overpowered and it was just him like the boogeyman. So he's definitely, and the music. I mean, the music makes that whole franchise too. It's phenomenal.
So what are your top five? We know there's Jason, we know there's Michael Myers. Who are your other three?
For slashers, or I mean, here we go again with a double question. Do you want my top five best horror films, or you want my
Yeah,
top five
I want
slashers?
your top five best horror films.
The Exorcist, The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, um, Halloween, the original, The Conjuring, and what would be five? I don't know. Probably Friday the 13th Part 4. Exorcist fan?
You know what? I really do enjoy The Exorcist. There's just something about it that just draws me in. The Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe, I thought was a
That
really
was so much better than I thought it was going to be.
yeah. That's exactly what I was like. No expectations went in. Wow, I really should have had some expectations.
Yeah. And as a it's funny if you say that, if I can elaborate. As a director and a writer, when I watched that film, I was like, what makes the people jump on his side? What makes him the ordinary man? I swear to God, it's him riding that little moped thing. Because he seems like such a common man. He seems like he's not this dragon slayer. He's just a regular guy on his little moped with his Bible and stuff. And then he gets off and he becomes this warrior. It makes it feel like we all could do it. I thought for me, that's what sold him on the movie, of you being on his side, right? It's such a great idea.
It was when he was in the storm trying to pull off that sewer grate. I was like, maybe not so much. But you know what? That's fine.
Yeah. I did like the witty thing that he did with the goat where he fooled
Yeah,
the, remember? I thought that was pretty witty too.
I like that. But I want to ask you something. Since you're in this world, in this genre, what are some common misconceptions people have about working in the horror genre that you believe?
I'll give you mine. Mine's a lot different. Everybody always says, oh, you're going to make a Friday 13th film. You're going to have sex and drugs in the movie. And I was like, I mean, if it called for it, then yeah, but I've never had nudity in my film. I've never had sex in my film, and I've never had drugs, I think, outside of alcohol, in any of the films that I've released yet. Now, I have Laugh coming out, is a new project coming out, and the gentleman goes on a decline and he ends up using drugs, but that's part of the story of
Yeah.
his decline, which happens every day to everybody. But I think the conception is that people always have this formula. They think that has to be a lot of kills, there has to be drug, sex, and violence, has to be all this. No, 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 no. It's the story. The story dictates it, and then it goes from where it is.
Peter, where can people learn more about you?
It's almost the Peter Anthony everywhere. So it's Peter Anthony on Instagram, Peter Anthony on Facebook. It's thepeteranthony.com. I have a .com site. It's the Peter Anthony show, and it's Peter Anthony Productions on YouTube. So it's pretty much Peter Anthony. You can get me almost anywhere.
I'm going to ask you some quick rapid fire questions here. I'd love to,
Hey,
to see what you come up with.
get ready. Let me stretch. Okay.
Get the stretch in.
Yeah.
What is the best horror film of all time for you?
The Exorcist Part One. I can't elaborate, right? We're just quick fire.
Oh, yeah. And now, if you could only watch one movie for the rest of your life, doesn't matter the genre, what would it be?
Halloween.
What's the most important lesson you've learned from working in the horror genre?
You're not as good as you think you are. Be humble and learn.
And what's your favorite horror movie cliche?
Man, I guess just the dumb blonde naked girl. Like that role just kind of never gets old. Actually, it has to be the dumb the horror versus the good girl. That cliche dynamic always seems to be in every horror film. It doesn't get old for me.
And what's something that scares you in real life?
Alzheimer's, not death, because I'll accept that, but not being who you really are, which I've seen in my family a lot of times, to me has got to be the worst. That's what scares me.
And if you could turn any classic fairy tale outside of the Snow White one, which you're already doing, into a horror film, which one would you choose?
Mickey Mouse. Yeah, right. That could be either Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse, something that's so pure that you just want to destroy, right?
What's the best sandwich?
Oh, peanut butter jelly.
Scariest animal?
Bear.
Ooh. What's your favorite smell?
If it's a food, is it a specific food?
It's anything you want.
I'm gonna go woman's hair.
Hmm.
Go
And are
deep.
you a flat water or a sparkling water guy?
Flat water.
Most used app on your phone?
Social media.
And what's one thing you really need to throw out?
Oh man. Just so you know, I'm a throw out guy. I throw everything out every day, probably too much. So there's not too much. Bad memories.
Bad memories. All right. And I have one last question for you today, Peter, and thank you so much for your time. Been joining me here with On Coffee with Chris. Is what makes Peter Anthony smile?
Children, family. I'll sit there and be on my phone, and you go down rabbit holes, and I'll see just children laughing or playing and stuff like that. And then my nieces and my family makes me smile no matter what mood I'm in.
I love that. And as I said for you, sir, that's the last question I had for you today on Coffee with Chris. Thank you so much for your time today. Everyone out there, check out the Peter Anthony everywhere possible. The Peter Anthony Show, the PeterAnthonyProduction.com, absolutely everything. Get behind him as much as you possibly can. Remember, everyone, to have a fantastic day and smile to inspire. Thank you so much, everybody.